and we're continuing to work within the management team to create new opportunities and more programs.
Boyd Duckett and the leaders at MLF are eliminating 30 positions for professional BPT anglers going into the 2025 season. There are definitely some big time names on the list, and you're going to be a little shocked on who they probably are. And in this video, I'm going to share with you who are the greatest at risk at losing their positions in professional fishing. Bass Pro Tour is reducing its field from 80 to 50 anglers. That brings a total pro level anglers of about 180 in total down to 150. If you look at 100 or so in the Elite Series, 80 in the BPT, now we're losing 30. That's about a 17% reduction in the overall pro anglers in the world, in the US. That is nearly a 40% reduction in the BPT field, which is a big time hit for people trying to make it in professional angling bass fishing tournaments. I'm going to get bogged down in the details of why these cuts are happening. Got another video for that, but let's dive into the data and let's talk about who is likely not going to be back in 2025. There's supposedly a list that's been published to the BPT anglers through MLF about the current rankings, where they're sitting, and how that formula works. But the list has not been shared to the public. Now, they have shared some information about how they're going to calculate this roster. They are going to take the top 35 lifetime average anglers from the BPT. Then they're going to add in the next 10 from the 2024 season, highest ranking anglers that aren't on that top 35. And then they're going to bring 5 in from the MLF invitationals to make up the 2025 50 angler roster. Now, on top of that, we know that for every 3 consecutive years a BPT angler completes, they get the opportunity for a drop. So my understanding is if you got 3 seasons in, you get to drop one already. And for the people that have been in the BPT the whole time, this 2024 will be the 6th season. So they will have 2 drops. So we're going to do our best to navigate that math, recreate the data, and tell you who is most likely on the chopping block by Boyd and MLF and Gary Klein and the whole team, who's likely going to be out of a job in 2025. Let's just take a quick look at the history. These are the 14 anglers that I came up with that might be off by 1 or 2 that have basically been churned in the last 5 years of the BPT. So you got 3 guys that have been kind of cut/retired, Elias, Lambert, and Grigsby, based on performance. There's been kind of a moving line. That's a whole nother topic, another subject, but those are the only ones that for sure have been cut and been replaced. Then you've got a handful of anglers like Justin Atkins, Christie, Iconelli, G-Man, Polinick, Porosnik, that have moved over to Bass, either requalifying through the Opens, fishing the Opens, using a Legends exemption. They moved over in the past handful of years. And then you've got Bobby Lane, Ish Monroe, who are in the process of attempting to qualify through the Opens. They do not have Legends exemptions. They both attempted to go to the Open EQs this year. Neither one of them made it, but I believe they're going to stay there and keep trying going into 2024. Obviously, we lost Aaron Martins. That's tragic. And then KBD definitely just retired. He was definitely in the qualification, doing just fine, but he just tried to, he's moving on to a different season of his career. Now, did he know some of this? Is this why he got out? A lot of speculation on that, but I wouldn't doubt it. So that's about a 17.5% churn thus far in the last 5 seasons of the BPT of those 80 anglers. Now let's get into some of the data. How did I do it? Just so you know the facts. If you don't want to see the guts and how the sausage is made, just fast forward to the end. So I collected all the data off the BPT website, scrolled through, copied and pasted into my own data sheets, manually compiled, ordered them, and then I manually took out for all the anglers that had 3 or more seasons. I basically did a color format, took out their lowest season. Most all of these anglers do have 3+ seasons. Some anglers like Cole Floyd do not. Dakota Eber do not. They will be getting their 3rd season this year, and then you've got a couple that only have 1 or 2, so they won't get any drops. Jacob Wall, he falls in that category as somebody that doesn't have any seasons to drop. Now, we bring that in, paste that into a new set of data where we've already dropped one, and then we're bringing that into a pivot so that I can take the count of the AOIs that I'm counting minus the drop already, their average over that period of time, and then their max, their worst finish that hasn't already been dropped, because we'll need that for future calculations. All right, so here's my list. What we're looking at here, and kind of the net sum of it here, is based on my estimations, there's about 25 anglers of that 35 that are darn near locks to make season, and we'll talk about why that is. There's about 10 anglers that are currently in mathematically, but they're at risk they could fall out. There's about 17 anglers that can move in based on lifetime average if they have a good season, where they can creep up and kind of and knock some of those 10 out. There's about there's kind of 20-25 anglers fighting for those last 10 spots. There's 20 anglers that basically need to have a top 10 AOI season. They need to be in that top 10 of anglers that aren't already qualified. So I'm guessing that's going to fall somewhere between a top 10 and a top 20, assuming that basically half the anglers are already like lifetime averaged in, will fill that top 10, and it'll kind of trickle down, if that makes sense. And then the 8 BPT rookies, which we'll talk about a little bit, basically need to have the same performance or better than those 20. So there's about 28, 30 people that basically need to be in that top 10 of the 2024 top qualifiers that aren't already qualified to make it in. They basically can't move their lifetime average, and the rookies don't have a lifetime average. So that's where they're sitting. So there's several anglers that are really have to have a big season, much better than what they've had in the past on the BPT, or have a great rookie season to make it in. Now let's walk through why that is. So looking at the top here, so what I got these color coded so you can kind of see the yellow ones in but at risk. Green ones, I feel like they're pretty much locked in. Orange, I feel like they have a shot to move in with just a solid season. And then white basically means you got to have a great season. And then the rookie watch, these guys. And then you have the rookies. They're basically in the same boat. Nelson, Stefan, Carson, Villa, Graybuck, Hatfield, and Marshall Robinson all just have to have they got to be in the top 10 of the 2024 that aren't qualified. That's their only option. So let's get into the numbers a little more deep here. Why are these green anglers pretty much locked in? They've already got a drop. So their lifetime average, like if you're Wheeler in 4 years, your average almost second, like you're better than second. Your worst is third. So even if Jacob Wheeler posts an 80th, finishes dead last, doesn't even fish, DQs every tournament, right? Like that's just his next drop. He can't literally fall any lower than he is because he's got 4 of his 6 seasons already cemented in. So basically anybody, so I think the cut line currently, right? Well, I guess I know the cut line or projected right now is basically Spencer Sheffield based on his one season right at 30th. He's in the top 35. So that 30, averaging a 30th out of 80 keeps you in the top 35 at this point. I think the average is going to go up because these anglers get another drop. So if you look at the numbers here, there's a pretty big jump between Alton Jones and Anthony Gagliardi. That 4-point gap, I believe somewhere between there and I think about 28, just kind of seeing how the numbers are coming out, is about where you're going to need to be, give or take a little bit, at the end of the season with your lifetime average to be in on lifetime average. So basically, I think Alton Jones is pretty safe because he's got a 33rd. So even if he puts up an 80th, he's going to stay at 24.8. And I don't think the cut will jump above Alton Jones. I don't think that there's going to be so many anglers that have great seasons that will drop. Now that's just, I haven't ran all the permutations, but that's kind of how I see it rolling out. So that's why I say these yellow anglers are in risk. Now, why would you say Matt Becker, he won Angler of the Year last year? How could he possibly be in risk? He's got a 1. Well, if he averages an 80th, if you look at this column, if you average an 80th with a 1, his lifetime average then becomes about 40 and a half, which puts him out. It's kind of an if then. He needs to basically finish 55th or better to have a 28 average or better. This is kind of my projections for some of these anglers, where they need to finish to make it in next year or above. Ebert, I put him in as a lot because I just don't see him having a bottom 5 season. He's got 2 seasons in where he's averaging basically 4.5. So even if he finishes 75th, he would put it at 28. Could he fall? Technically, yes. I don't see that happen. He's a really good angler. And then you got guys like Lawyer, Dudley, Hunter. David Dudley's a little more tricky to predict here because his worst season coming into this year is a 51st. So as long as he basically matches that 51st or above, he'll maintain his that 28-point ranking or so. So he basically just needs to be in the top half-ish, little worse than that even. Lawyer needs basically a 44th. Hunter needs a 34th to stay in. So these guys are sitting good. And then these guys need, you can kind of see, they basically need the top 30, 40 finish. Most of these anglers here will keep them in the BPT based on my estimations. If these anglers in orange and below finish 11th, so that's basically saying they don't automatically get a top 10. So if they made a top 10, they would automatically move on to top 25 or 2025 season. So I did ran the calculation saying that if they post an 11th, where does that put their lifetime average? So these guys all clearly can pretty much get in that 20 to 30 area. Now, like Butler would be close, Salzman would be close, Floyd, they, you know, but it's mathematically that number could fluctuate in there. So they can fish their way in without having a top 10 type season. But all these people down here, minus Wall, who can get really close to that bubble with an 11th, these anglers are in a tough position because even with 11th, they fall below the current cut line, which means they basically have to make it in on 2024 results alone. Don't really know, like Crete, I think he's retired. I'm not sure. Timmy Horton said he's retired, but then he fished last year. Biffle, I think, is already out this year. I think McClelland is. They haven't published it, but I feel like a handful of these anglers are already out, and they're making room for the rookies coming in because this number needs to be down to 80. So in theory, with 8 rookies coming in, 8 of these guys are already gone, which would be these anglers right here. So I think the rookies will replace these bottom 8. So I think unless Boyd Duckett is doing some crazy stuff like he has done in the past and keeps staying alive, he should not be fishing in 2024. But we'll be watching that, and I guess none of us will be surprised if somehow Boyd Duckett is fishing the BPT in 2024. But that's the way it should work on paper based on what we know. So these rookies should replace those bottom 8, and then basically they have to have a banger season to get in that top 10 after the lifetime averages. These guys can fish their way in. There's some big names on this list like Tharp, Bertrand. They can move up, but they're going to have a really good season to move up some of these anglers. Like, Bertrand, you think is a really quality young angler. If he has an 11th, it puts him at 21.8, but I don't know if I didn't run all the if no scenarios, but I'm guessing he needs like a 20, 25 types, top 25 seasons to stay in. Luke Clausen, former classic champ, he's kind of on the bubble. Rumbanis on the bubble. I should note that I did watch the Todd Castledine interview. The contracts were due very recently to sign on the BPT, and it sounds like, according to the chat, Mitch Crane definitely did not sign. He said it was going to be his last season. He wasn't participating in the BPT. You can see here this little screenshot from the chat, and it sounds like based on the conversation, him and Butler were aligned. Now, I've heard 2 anglers didn't sign, so my understanding, don't know this for sure, Mitch Crane and Josh Butler did not resign. Now, they were a couple of the anglers that only had 1 season, I believe. So Mitch Crane had a 51st, which puts him, he could get close to the bubble, but basically he'd basically be in rookie position from that standpoint. Josh Butler, I think he doesn't have to have quite a good season, but they're both in a similar position with only having a 1 year. They don't have a lot of cushion, a lot of leeway to requalify. So my understanding is they're not coming back, which potentially saves, maybe a Roy Hawk or a Kelly Jordan or a Boyd Duckett or somebody like that to get back in for the 2024 season. I did see that Advanced Bass Stats on Instagram, they ran their analysis. It looks like our lists are very similar. I will share that on the screen here. You can kind of look at them. If you have any questions, comments, leave them down below about the calculations. Love to hear your thoughts. But these people in white really are the ones that are at the biggest risk. A lot of veterans here. Skeet Reese, former classic champ, AOI. Terry Scroggins, a long-term, tournament staple veteran. Suggs, FLW Cup champion. Wall, an upcoming rookie. He's only got 1 season. He's in a tough spot. Shin Mukai, Matt Lee, Jordan Lee's brother. Keith Poche, Randy Howell, classic champion, a guy that, has never had another job other than professional fishing. Marty Robinson looks like his kid could be coming in. And if his kid has a good season and Marty doesn't have a good season, they'll basically have 1 year where they both fish the BPT together. Lefebvre, Rojas, James Watson, been quite vocal. He's got some good interviews with Luke Duncan and Castledine and others. Height, coming off that tragic bird deal on the One Bass Open. David Walker, I don't think John Murray, I don't know if they've done anything but fish in their entire lives. So what's going to happen to these anglers if they don't requalify? They're out on the BPT. Their options are basically retire, fish the MLF Invitationals, which is kind of not a great payout circuit, not a huge platform. It's kind of like fishing the Bassmaster Opens. They could go to the Bassmaster Opens, which is no easy feat, no guarantee, not great paybacks. They could go the MPFL, or they could try to start a YouTube channel or do something else. But the options are not really great when you fall off of one of the Bassmaster Elite or Bass Pro or tours. It's really hard to qualify. It's really hard to get back in. And when you're at the end of your career, this is a really tough spot. Now, why this is a big deal is these anglers are basically promised, 5 years ago. Leave bass, come with us, leave your current circuit. This is going to be the promised land. Everybody's going to make tons of money. And now it kind of feels like the rug's been pulled out from under some of these guys. Now, they always knew there was going to be some attrition at the bottom, you know, 5, 6, 8 anglers a year, which happens. That's, performance based. You expect that. But when you lose almost 40% of the field in a single season, that's a big deal. If you're frustrated, like so many of the anglers are, so many fans are, about these changes, what MLF is doing, and why they're happening, click on this video right here, and I'll explain why BPT is making these changes.